Coming up, NATO and ex-Democrat Defense Secretary praise Donald Trump. MSNBC give up on keeping pace with Trump. The NATO head talks European NATO defence contributions, and Scott Jennings smashes the CNN narrative on the economy. Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor to President Trump, on the potential of a Ukraine war ceasefire.
All right, let me ask you this. Russia says they're ready to discuss peace with Ukraine. Putin says he's open to a Ukraine peace deal. Putin did put out also a lot of caveats. My understanding is, I believe it's Steve Witkoff. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's Steve Witkoff. And that there are meetings taking place in Moscow that took place today. I'm assuming you don't want to negotiate on national television and tell us everything that happened. I respect that. But do you have a level of confidence? I understand when Putin has his caveats, he's negotiating on his end. There are things he's going to want. There are things Zelensky's going to want. And neither Zelensky or Putin are going to get everything that they want if we're going to get a deal. With all that said, are you confident we can get there?
Well, Sean, we'll see, but I'm confident if anybody could get us there, it's President Trump. You're right. I'm not going to, announce or negotiate anything on national television, certainly not ahead of the president. But we do have some cautious optimism. You saw the Ukrainians move from where we were in the Oval Office to where we were in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with Secretary of State Rubio. And you saw President Putin's press conference today. Of course, both sides are going to have their demands. And of course, both sides are going to have to make some compromises, and the shuttle diplomacy of going.
Trump here has gone where Biden could only have dreamt of going. The reality is Biden had no clue. The only policy position Biden had on this was to continue fighting. And if the continuing fighting didn't work out so well, continue fighting some more and some more and some more. The reality is, as soon as you got down to the deadlock where you had trench warfare effectively, and maneuver warfare had stopped and it became attrition war, that was time to start negotiating towards a ceasefire. Things were not happening. All you had was a meat grinder. Trump moved things through. First of all, he had, after that infamous meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office, he had threats to Ukraine about, and he followed through in terms of stopping aid, stopping intelligence. That brought Ukraine to the ceasefire table when Ukraine went to Saudi Arabia to negotiate. Now there are threats to Putin in terms of continued and ramped up weaponry going to Ukraine and further significant financial sanctions against Russia if Russia doesn't come to the party as far as ceasefire is concerned. Now, clearly it's going to be very difficult after the ceasefire to actually come to a middle ground, to actually come to terms for an actual peace agreement. Now, I'm the first to admit, I hate to have to compromise here. I think that Ukraine should be allowed to go back to their original borders. I genuinely believe that that's where the ideal position would be to end the war. But you've got to be pragmatic. Then you have NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
And finally, Ukraine. You broke the deadlock. As you said, all the killing, the young people dying, cities getting destroyed. The fact that you did that you started the dialogue with the Russians, and the successful talks in Saudi Arabia now with the Ukrainians. I really want to commend you for this. So, The Hague is my hometown. I love to host you there in the summer and work together to make sure that that will be a splash, a real success, projecting American power on the world stage.
Here, NATO Secretary General Rutte admits that it took Trump to get ceasefire discussions on the road. Prior to that, Europe, all of Europe, and Biden could only think of continuing the war. As I said, as soon as manoeuvre warfare ended and you got into attrition warfare, that should have been the time when Europe and Biden took action. But they let it drag on and on and on, with unfortunately tens to hundreds of thousands more deaths occurring in that time period. Trump came in and he's broken the deadlock. No guarantees of ceasefire or peace agreements, but at least there are moves afoot. It is not just continue and no discussions at all. We're almost halfway there. Ukraine's agreed, Russia's got to agree, and the pressure is now all on Putin. If you enjoy this content, please like, share and subscribe. Then we have the ex-Obama Defense Secretary Leon Panetta.
Trump was asked specifically whether he has leverage on Putin, and he said that he does, though he didn't want to get into specifics and talk about that. I do wonder, though, whether the leverage is all on the Kremlin side, because Russia is making advances, specifically in Kursk. The Kremlin saying that they've recaptured the largest town that Ukraine had occupied there. Is it the case that Putin is likely to wait and see what the United States is willing to give up?
Well, this is Putin's game. This is the way he always behaves. And the key to Putin is to make clear that if he doesn't accept this ceasefire, the United States is going to provide military aid, we're going to provide intelligence, we're going to provide support to Ukraine so that they can continue the fighting.
Trump has all the leverage against Russia with us, and yet somehow or another the interviewer thinks that Russia has all of the leverage, I guess because at the moment Russia is advancing. There's a bit of a lack of understanding on the part of the interviewer here about what the actual tactical and strategic situations are. Panetta corrects him and says that military aid will be ramped up as well as intelligence efforts and also significant economic pain for Russia if Putin doesn't come to the ceasefire table. The reality is Russia also wants a path out. As I've said previously, if Putin knew in early 2022 what he knows now about the war, he would never have embarked on it. He embarked on it because opportunistically, given the history of the Crimean conflict from 2014, he thought he could just walk in and install a puppet government. That hasn't worked out very well for him. So he also wants a road out, a pathway out that will give him some credence with his own people. And then we have an exhausted MSNBC.
I hope you noticed that I did not make that same pledge when you did.
You're not going anywhere, are you?
Well, here's the thing. This is day 52. I thought it was day 92. It turns out it's day 52, Rachel, and I'm exhausted at day 52. And so yeah. I'm going to take next week off. And I'm telling you that now because I know you don't like it when I just drift away.
MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell is exhausted. So exhausted after 52 days in the Trump administration, he needs to go and leave. Now, O'Donnell is only 73. Remember how the Dems went on about Trump during the election campaign, talking about how old he was and way too old for the job and he didn't have the energy for the job? Well, the reality is he also ran the legs off most of the younger Democrats, including his opponent, who was nearly 20 years younger, in Kamala Harris. The truth is, Trump has massive energy and he's burning it everywhere. It's difficult to imagine someone of 78 having the amount of energy that he does. Then we go back to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
I must say, Trump 45, you originated the fact that in Europe we are now spending, when you take it to aggregate, 700 billion more on defense than when you came in office in 2016, 2017. But that was Trump 45. But then when you look at Trump 47, what happened the last couple of weeks is really staggering. The Europeans committing to a package of 800 billion defense spending. The Germans now, potentially up to $500 billion extra in defense spending. And then, of course, you had Keir Starmer here, the British Prime Minister, and others, all committing to much higher defense spending. We're not there. We need to do more, but I really want to work together with you in a run-up to the The Hague Summit to make sure that we will have a NATO which is really reinvigorated under your leadership, and we are getting there.
NATO's Rutte here commends Donald Trump on, in his first term, getting almost all of the NATO membership to pay up their 2% on defence spending. And Trump went on about that in his first term, and he said he would not be supporting nations in NATO that weren't actually contributing at least 2%. There's still going to be massive increases in spending, according to Rutte. The other point is, the truth about Rutte's visit and what he says is that he has effectively been sent to repair relationships with the US. Europe had a whole lot to say about going it alone and providing support to Ukraine on their own, etc., European Defence Force, but they very quickly came to the realisation that they couldn't go it alone. They desperately needed the US. In fact, Rutte here spoke of the US as being the leader of NATO. That is a very strategic mark and very deliberate. And then we have Scott Jennings on the economy.
Look, the Dow is down pretty significantly, and a lot of it is not really because I think Wall Street thinks that the economy is all that on shaky ground. They just don't have a lot of confidence in what's going to come next.
Well, I think corrections are not unusual. I mean, during the bull market from 2009 to 2020, I think we even had 5 corrections during that period. We tend to have them every couple of years. It's not unusual. They tend to be cyclical. There are other signs, I think, in the economy that are helping real people. Wholesale inflation is down. Consumer inflation is down. Gas prices are decreasing. Mortgage rates coming down. Egg prices are $4.89 today. They were $6.55 on January 21st. We've seen manufacturing jobs in the last jobs report go up. Private investment announcements are going up. And a whole bunch of nutty climate regulations have been eviscerated by this administration. So the stock market is one measurement. It's not unusual for corrections to occur, but there's a whole bunch of green shoots that I think we could look to and say, maybe there's some optimism to be had.
Here, the CNN host tried to push the narrative about economic instability, clearly a Democrat talking point. Now, Jennings clearly put this issue to bed. Most of the economic indicators, as he pointed out, are in fact good. Inflation measures, growth measures, a whole lot of other measures. The other point that he makes is that volatility or even corrections in the market are normal in a continuing bull market. It doesn't mean that it's headed towards a bear market. A rapid turn down is indicative of either volatility or correction. Bull markets come in slowly. Now, tariffs as well are not a major factor in terms of the US economic well-being. Even if you take the worst case scenarios in terms of the impacts of tariffs, it will have at most a 0.8% impact on GDP. Now, this is effectively made up in less than 4 months of growth, even ignoring other factors regarding the tariffs that result in increased growth, such as more onshoring of industry, more job growth, etc., etc. Now, what do you think about the NATO European U-turn? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.